When a criminal possesses peerless beauty, her chances of escaping conviction increase by at least 50%. What if she also holds a PhD in psychology? A woman's mere subconscious gesture can instantly dismantle an interrogator's psychological defenses. When their attention shifts, the interrogation has already lost its original purpose. Now, someone might ask, how could such a formidable criminal be captured for interrogation? The answer is simple: because the woman is cooperative and volunteering. As for why such extensive resources are being deployed, that leads back to yesterday's murder case. Rockstar Johnny died tragically in his own villa. The scene utterly gruesome. His hands were bound to the headboard with a white silk scarf, and his body was pierced hundreds of times with an ice pick. What baffled the medical examiner most was that a specific anatomical part remained excited even at the moment of death. Precisely for this reason, the medical examiner preliminarily concluded Johnny was killed during an act of pleasure. With this assessment, women who had ambiguous relationships with Johnny naturally became suspects. Catherine, Johnny's nominal girlfriend, was immediately listed as the prime suspect. Due to Johnny's celebrity status, the police chief assigned top investigator Nick to take charge, hoping to solve the case quickly and restore public confidence. Nick, receiving the order, acted immediately and went with his colleague to Catherine's residence. However, they didn't find Catherine herself, but encountered a very confident young woman. When Nick mentioned Johnny's name,
Is he dead?
Why do you think he's dead?
Well, you wouldn't be here otherwise, would you?
Were you with him last night?
You're looking for Catherine, not me.
Who are you?
I'm Roxy. I'm her friend.
she responded in a surprisingly calm manner. But Nick didn't forget his purpose. He soon learned Catherine's whereabouts from Roxy. At a beachfront villa, Nick encountered the strikingly beautiful Catherine. Before they could speak, Catherine directly countered by asking if Johnny was dead. Her reaction solidified Nick and his partner Gus's suspicions, and they promptly began questioning her. When Nick asked how long they had been dating, Catherine openly stated there was no emotional bond between her and Johnny. She was only with him because she found him interesting. Seeing the conversation veer wildly off track, Nick quickly steered it back.
How long were you having sex with him?
About a year and a half.
Were you with him last night?
Yes.
Did you leave the club with him?
Yes.
Did you go home with him?
No. We had a drink at the club. We left together. He went home and I came out here.
Was there anyone with you last night?
No. I wasn't in the mood last night.
Expecting Catherine to desperately try to clear her name, they found she was utterly indifferent to the officer's thoughts. Unable to provide an alibi, her suspicion deepened further. However, when Nick attempted to bring her to the station for questioning, Catherine outright told them to arrest her. With no evidence, Nick and Gus could only leave in frustration. Back at the station, Nick was scheduled for a psychological evaluation. Even though the psychologist Beth was his ex-girlfriend, this quasi-investigative questioning was unavoidable. For certain reasons, Nick had become a key focus for internal affairs. Sensing Nick's impatience, Beth avoided work-related questions. When they were together, she often let Nick bypass procedures. Now she was merely pressured by internal affairs. Beth asked Nick how he had been lately. Nick replied that after their breakup, he found a new girlfriend, one who obeys him 100%, though her skin is a bit rough. Beth expressed satisfaction with Nick's answer. When Nick said he quit drinking and was even quitting smoking, Beth's feelings stirred again.
I still miss you, Nick.
Ignoring Beth's hint at rekindling their romance, Nick turned back to his work. The case currently seemed at a dead end. The killer left no evidence at the scene. The ice pick used as the murder weapon is found in almost every American home. The Hermes scarf used for binding sells tens of thousands annually. Victim Johnny's social circle was simple. His hobbies beyond women involved illicit substances. He had no family, and the $5 million he left behind had no known heir. To prevent the case from stalling completely, police focused suspicion on his nominal girlfriend, Catherine. Investigating Catherine revealed her remarkable background. A double PhD in literature and psychology from Berkeley, a billionaire heiress after her parents' death. Her ex-husband was a boxing champion, but he died in a match just a few years into their marriage. Insurance payouts and the champion's inheritance multiplied Catherine's wealth. After achieving total financial freedom, she became a writer. What horrified police most was that a book Catherine once published detailed the murder of a rock star by his girlfriend. Upon returning, Nick began studying the contents of that book. To his horror, the fictional murder described in the novel matched Johnny's real life. The next day, everyone at the police station gathered again. To analyze the killer's motive, they even invited a psychology professor. Based on the current evidence, Dr. Lamont presented two possibilities. Either the killer is the author of the book, committing murders based on its rituals, or someone wants to frame the author, and the killer chose to play along after seeing the book. If it's the former, Nick and his team would face an extremely difficult opponent. The book was published half a year ago, meaning the author planned the murder for a long time. If it's the latter, they must prepare for a needle-in-a-haystack search. The book didn't sell many copies, only several 100,000. After hearing Dr. Lamott's analysis, Nick and his colleagues laughed. After all that talk, Doctor, Lamott essentially told them the killer was either the author or a reader. After a brief discussion, they unanimously decided to summon Catherine for questioning, and even this simple summons made them act as if facing a formidable enemy. With Catherine's immense wealth, she could easily hire a top legal team. One misstep, and any of them could end up behind bars. While the superiors were on high alert, Nick spoke up.
I don't think she'll hide behind anybody.
And she's as crazy as you are, Karen.
Although he had only met Catherine once, Nick felt an inexplicable understanding of her. Arranged by his superiors, Nick found Catherine again. After stating his purpose, Catherine didn't refuse to cooperate like before. However, she wanted to change into beautiful clothes before going to the station. While waiting, Nick noticed old newspapers on the table. The subject was none other than his accidental shooting of 2 tourists. Although ruled an accident, the incident always filled Nick with guilt. As Nick was lost in memories, Catherine called out from the bedroom, asking how long she was expected to cooperate. Following the voice, Nick's eyes locked and couldn't look away. They didn't wait long. Catherine simply wore a dress. Just as Nick guessed,
I'm ready.
You have the right to an attorney.
Why would I need an attorney?
Catherine disdained hiring a lawyer. On the way back to the station, Gus tried to probe Catherine during conversation, but they weren't even playing in the same league. When Gus complimented Catherine's book as brilliant, she directly stated she was practicing lying. She deceived readers with the novel's plot, making them believe her fabricated lies. When Nick asked what book she was writing recently, Catherine's answer was even more startling.
A detective. He falls for the wrong woman.
What happens?
She kills him.
Nick wasn't overly concerned by Catherine's provocative behavior. He was supremely confident, and with years in criminal investigation handling countless unsolved cases, he believed he could catch her out. When the station staff saw Catherine, they were equally astonished. First, by her beauty, and second, by the fact that Nick had accurately guessed she wouldn't bring a lawyer.
There's no smoking in this building, Miss Trammell.
What are you gonna do? Charge me with smoking?
In their first clash, the prosecutors already found themselves on the back foot, and once the formal questioning began, they never seized the initiative. Though the prosecution's questions were sharp, Catherine countered each one perfectly. Then, under her provocation, the interrogators lost their composure. As a master of psychology, Catherine knew exactly how to manipulate men's minds. Just as they prepared to end the interrogation, Catherine surprisingly volunteered for a polygraph test. Even in this contest against the machine, she dominated without breaking a sweat. Colleagues dismissed their suspicions of Catherine, convinced no one could fool the machine. But Nick insisted she was lying, because he too could fool that machine. However, without concrete evidence, they had to release Catherine. Nick volunteered to drive Catherine home. Alone with her, Nick no longer hid his suspicion.
Beating that machine can't be easy.
It wouldn't be hard at all. You took a lie detector test after you shot those 2 people, didn't you?
You seem to know an awful lot about me.
You know an awful lot about me.
I don't know anything that's not police business.
You know I don't wear any underwear. Don't you, Nick? Thanks for the ride.
Though seemingly fragile, Nick sensed danger emanating from her. Yet facing such an opponent reignited his fighting spirit. Thus, Nick, sober for 3 months, picked up a drink again. As they discussed how to proceed with the case, a discordant voice sounded nearby. As part of internal affairs, Marty still held a grudge over Nick's previous exoneration. Seeing Nick drinking peacefully in a bar fueled his resentment. Nick initially tried to ignore Marty's provocation, but Marty grew increasingly offensive, clearly trying to anger Nick, until Beth arrived just in time to expose Marty's scheme. Also part of internal affairs, she knew exactly the cost if Nick lashed out in anger. Beth expressed extreme disgust towards Marty's shameless behavior. However, this opportunity did allow Beth to successfully reconcile with Nick. Afterwards, Nick fell into deep thought again, and Beth, as a psychologist, instantly recognized he was thinking about another woman. To prevent her boyfriend from dwelling on the case, Beth offered him a small lead. While studying psychology at Berkeley, she and Catherine had been classmates for a time. After investigating incidents from that year at Berkeley, they uncovered a shocking piece of information. A professor had been murdered at the school that year, similarly stabbed to death in bed with an ice pick. Everyone present were seasoned detectives. They refused to believe such a coincidence existed. So Lieutenant Walker gave the order, and the investigation into Catherine was reopened. Team members took their assigned tasks. Some went to the school to investigate the incident, others looked into the records of Catherine's parents' deaths. The most dangerous surveillance duty fell to Nick. In Lieutenant Walker's view, Catherine was like a bewitching yet deadly nightshade, and only a top agent like Nick, battle-hardened and experienced, could handle her dangerous allure. Trying to keep up with Catherine, Nick nearly pushed his clunky old car to its limits, but with their driving skills roughly equal, equipment became crucial, leading Nick not only to lose her but also nearly cause a major accident. Luckily, his aimless wandering led him to spot the supercar again. He kept watch until nightfall, when Catherine finally emerged from a wealthy person's house. Following her back to her residence, Nick slipped inside. The beautiful scenery in the courtyard couldn't hold Nick's attention. The graceful figure before the floor-to-ceiling window was the most captivating sight. For a moment, Nick was utterly transfixed. Back at the station, Nick immediately investigated the woman Catherine had met. That woman had killed her entire family, but diagnosed with mental illness, she escaped legal punishment. Gus's school investigation also yielded results. The deceased professor had been Catherine's mentor. The next day, Nick eagerly visited Catherine, determined to see how she would explain away so many coincidences. The first thing Nick saw upon entering was the newspapers on the table again. These all detailed cases from his undercover days. He didn't know what this woman was playing at. Addressing Nick's confusion, Catherine explained she was writing a new book about a detective falling for a female killer, with the male lead modeled on him, hence her need to know Nick intimately. Catherine said she was great at mixing drinks and invited Nick to try one. But the way she used the ice pick to stab the ice cubes was clearly a provocation to the inspector. Nick inquired about the university professor. Catherine freely admitted he was her mentor, adding that the ice pick murder of the rock star in her book drew inspiration from her mentor's death. Then Nick questioned the woman again, and Catherine stated that they didn't become friends until after the woman had committed the murder. Such a casual answer made Nick feel like he'd punched cotton. Before he could press further, Catherine turned the tables and began interrogating him. In that moment, their roles seemed reversed. Catherine became the questioner.
The day you shot those two tourists, how much coke did you do? Come on, you can tell me.
I didn't.
Yes, you did. They never tested you, did they? Internal Affairs knew. Your wife knew too, didn't she? Nikki got too close to the flame. Nikki liked it. That's why she killed herself.
Roxy's arrival interrupted their charged exchange. While seeming flustered by the truth, Nick was actually wondering who leaked his information. Successfully going undercover for 5 years meant his records were well protected. Very few knew the details now, and Beth happened to be one of them. Returning to the station, Nick stormed into Beth's office. Under his furious gaze, Beth confessed Marty had snooped into his file. With old and new grudges combined, Nick exploded. He believed falling behind in his battle with Catherine was entirely due to this scoundrel. Without his data being sold, he wouldn't be led by the nose by a woman. However, Nick's rage was quickly quelled. Calmed by others, he cooled down swiftly. The persistent lack of evidence against Catherine drained Nick's hope. When Beth came to offer comfort, he, still angry, gave her a cold shoulder. Within a few words, they came to physical blows. But as a psychologist, Beth was adept at managing her emotions. After a brief calm, she immediately apologized to Nick. Disclosing his file wasn't intentional. Marty threatened to fire Nick, and she used it as leverage to save his job. But Nick wasn't in the mood to consider anything else, so they parted on bad terms. Just as Nick planned to get some sleep, Lieutenant Walker called urgently. Marty from Internal Affairs had been shot dead in his car, and now Nick was the prime suspect. They had clashed publicly during the day, both threatening to kill each other, making Nick the natural first suspect. Nick paid little mind to his colleagues' questioning. He could fool a polygraph, let alone when he truly hadn't killed Marty.
There's no smoking in this building, Detective.
What are you gonna do, charge me with smoking?
No wonder Catherine seemed so smug last time. This feeling was genuinely exhilarating. With Beth's testimony, Nick was quickly cleared of suspicion, though he was temporarily suspended. Thinking he finally had a vacation, he arrived home to find Catherine waiting downstairs. Her presence reignited his fighting spirit. The incompetents left at the station stood no chance against Catherine. Bringing her to justice required his involvement for even the slimmest hope. Nick was never a coward. Since Catherine wanted to play, he would see it through. Catherine gifted Nick a book about a boy killing his parents and staging it as an accident. To Nick, this was a blatant challenge. When he asked when she wrote it, Catherine paused slightly, then said it was after her parents died. Denying Nick further opportunity, Catherine soon excused herself. But upon leaving, she mentioned the name of a bar. That night, Nick found Catherine at the bar. Having confirmed his opponent, he was determined to be the aggressor. And battles between masters are always filled with tension. That very night, intimacy occurred between them. Yet even then, their mental duel continued. Catherine produced the Hermes scarf, and Nick let her bind his hands. However, he wasn't stabbed full of holes, only left with a few light scratches on his back. After Catherine fell asleep, Nick went to the bathroom. Right then, a figure appeared behind him.
If you don't leave her alone, I'll kill you.
How long you been here? You like watching, don't you?
She likes me to watch.
Nick dismissed Roxy's warning and soon fell asleep holding Catherine. Waking up, the sun was nearly setting again. The contest between Catherine and Nick continued. Catherine warned him it wasn't too late to back down, but Nick wouldn't yield now. Leaving Catherine's place, he immediately found Gus. Learning about what happened between Nick and Catherine, Gus called Nick despicable, saying he wouldn't even collect his body if Nick ended up stabbed with an ice pick. But Nick said Gus couldn't understand. This was what he called strategic retreat. Given Nick's seemingly sincere attitude, Gus finally shared his recent findings. Examining Marty's belongings confirmed the sale of Nick's confidential data. However, this transaction occurred 3 months ago, meaning Catherine had been investigating him long before. This realization sent chills down Nick's spine. But at this point, he would never back down easily. After parting with Gus, Nick immediately faced a life-threatening crisis. Catherine's black sports car appeared behind him, then suddenly rammed into him. Had Nick not been agile, he would have at least broken a leg today. Seeing the sports car trying to escape, Nick immediately gave chase in his own car. Knowing he lacked speed, he decisively took shortcuts, finally managing to corner the sports car. Facing the oncoming sports car, Nick didn't hesitate. He slammed the accelerator head-on. Nick rushed off the bridge at top speed only to discover the driver was Roxy. This woman who vowed to kill him ultimately paid with her life. The unlucky Nick became the prime suspect once again. However, there were no other eyewitnesses at the scene. The account of how the accident happened relied solely on Nick's word. Given his standing, the police were still inclined to believe him. Though Nick avoided formal interrogation, a severe reprimand was inevitable. The next day when he arrived at the police station, a new round of psychological tests was waiting for him. Nick was fed up. He felt like they already saw him as a lunatic. This time, not only did he refuse to cooperate, but he also cursed out the doctor. Beth, his nominal girlfriend, instantly saw Nick was disturbed and rushed out to urge him to control his emotions.
You're sleeping with her, aren't you?
What's this interest you've got in her?
My interest is in you, not her. She seduces people. She manipulates people. She'll do anything she
I
can.
thought you hardly knew her.
I know the type. I'm a psychologist.
That means you manipulate people too, Beth. You're a practicing psychologist. You're better at it than she is.
I feel sorry for you, Nick.
But Nick was now under a poisonous influence. He wouldn't listen to anything Beth said. Leaving the station, Nick headed straight for Catherine's villa. Catherine was currently in deep grief. She felt immense guilt over Roxy's death. Roxy often saw her with other men, but never expected such intense jealousy this time. Had she stopped Roxy yesterday, this tragedy might have been avoided. Seeing Catherine cry so heartbreakingly, Nick felt great pain. He asked how he could comfort her.
Make love to me.
With Nick's comfort, Catherine eventually emerged from her sorrow. During their conversation, Nick speculated if Johnny's death might also have been motivated by Roxy's jealousy. Catherine stated Roxy had never been jealous before, only focused on heightening Catherine's excitement. In the end, she blamed Roxy's death on the fact that she didn't get along well with other women. Then she also told Nick about a woman she met in school. During her college years, she once dated a girl who became obsessed with her. The girl not only dyed her hair the same color as hers, but also imitated her outfits every day. If she remembered correctly, the girl's name was Lisa Oberman, and Catherine's casual words were all noted by Nick. He then rushed to Berkeley College to investigate the Lisa Oberman mentioned by Catherine. After searching all systems, he failed to find this name. Feeling deceived again, Nick angrily confronted Catherine.
There was no Lisa Oberman when you were at Berkeley.
What are you doing? Checking up on me? For what? I said Hoberman.
When investigating the name Lisa Hoberman, a girl's profile indeed appeared, and she was obviously, the psychologist Beth. As Catherine had said, Beth also had blonde hair during her school years. With this crucial clue, Nick directly approached Beth. Upon hearing Catherine's name, Beth knew she couldn't hide it anymore. Her story matched Catherine's, but she claimed it was Catherine who had been obsessive. However, in such matters, the first person to tell the story is usually more believable, so Nick wasn't satisfied with Beth's response. Beth was distressed by Nick's distrust. She knew Catherine well, a woman skilled at weaving stories. Now Nick was likely misled by Catherine's narrative, suspecting Beth of killing everyone out of jealousy. Nick argued that Catherine didn't know Beth at all and had only mentioned the name Lisa Hoberman.
She knows you'd find out who Lisa Hoberman is. You're a good cop. She tell you casually? Make it seem irrelevant? I mean, did she tell you in bed, Nick? It's what I do.
Beth's words left Nick deep in thought. On reflection, it seemed Catherine had been deliberately guiding him. By then, Nick's mind was in a mess, unsure of who to believe. Hoping to go home and think alone, he found Catherine waiting downstairs. Nick admitted he'd found the girl she described and relayed Beth's version. Catherine showed intense anger at Nick's distrust. But before leaving, she told him she'd once called the police due to the other girl's harassment. To uncover the truth, Nick rushed back to the police station. In the pile of archives, he found Catherine's police report, but the detailed records had been borrowed by Marty. This convinced him of Catherine's story. Surely Beth, obsessed with Catherine, had killed Johnny, and murdering Marty must have been to cover up her disgraceful past. Gus disagreed with Nick's judgment. He didn't believe Beth was a psychotic killer. Instead, it seemed Nick had been brainwashed by Catherine. They parted on bad terms due to their disagreement. To prove his hypothesis, Nick immediately launched an investigation into Beth. Beth's husband had also died in a murder, shot point blank with a revolver. Lacking solid evidence, the case remained unsolved. Someone had inquired about this case before, and that person was none other than Marty. In Nick's mind, Beth now became the prime suspect, while Catherine was cleared of suspicion. Nick rushed to Catherine's residence immediately, wanting to share the good news with her. He didn't find Catherine, but he did see the final chapter of her novel, where the detective rushes upstairs only to find his colleague lying in a pool of blood. However, Nick didn't pay it any mind. All he wanted now was to share his joy with his lover. Yet, to his declaration of love, Catherine reacted with extreme impatience. She showed none of their former closeness and immediately told him it was time to say goodbye.
Goodbye?
Yeah, I finished my book. Didn't you hear me? Your character's dead. Goodbye.
What is this, some kind of joke?
Nick couldn't accept Catherine's attitude of discarding him after use. Now he's deeply involved, but the other person wants to pull away. But Catherine was simply that ruthless. She wouldn't change for Nick. After leaving her place, Nick fell into a daze. Even when Gus found someone who could confirm the relationship between Beth and Catherine, Nick still couldn't muster any spirit. It seemed that now, in his heart, Catherine's attitude towards him mattered more than the truth of the case. Since Nick was suspended and in such a low state, Gus decided to go alone to meet their classmate. The moment Gus entered the elevator, Nick, waiting in the car, suddenly realized something. The contents of Catherine's novel flashed through his mind like lightning. He frantically charged towards the building, but by then, Gus had already reached the 4th floor. As the elevator doors opened, a figure attacked him. Under the frenzied stabs of the ice pick, Gus offered no resistance. By the time Nick arrived, the cheerful, overweight man was beyond saving. He had little time for grief. Footsteps were slowly approaching from behind. Nick immediately took Gus's service weapon and burst out of the elevator. It was none other than Beth, the prime suspect in Nick's mind. Facing Nick's gun, Beth explained that Gus had texted her to come. But how could Nick believe her now?
Take your hand out of your pocket! Take him out!
What's wrong with you?
Take him out!
As Nick moved closer to check, Beth only managed to utter her final, "I love you." When Nick checked her pockets, he found only the keys to his own apartment. Lieutenant Walker and his team soon took over the scene. At the scene, they found a golden wig, the murder weapon ice pick, and a raincoat belonging to their police team. Based on Nick's account, Lieutenant Walker immediately ordered a search of Beth's residence. On her bookshelf, they found a revolver. Forensic comparison quickly confirmed it was the weapon used to kill Marty. Subordinates also found Catherine's novel and some materials related to her. Though an officer was lost, Lieutenant Walker wasn't disheartened. It seemed the long, troubling case could finally be closed, but Nick, who should have been relieved, felt no joy. Although all evidence pointed to Beth, Nick knew she wasn't the killer. And if Beth wasn't the killer, then it could only be Catherine. Nick felt an unprecedented weariness. He didn't want to investigate anymore. Maybe giving up wouldn't be so bad. At least he could stop feeling so guilty. Yet fate had other plans. The woman who disturbed his peace appeared at his home again. Catherine had been restraining her emotions, not wanting to fall for Nick. Everyone who received her affection had died, and she didn't know if Nick could bear it. But love is never something you can control. Sometimes, the more you restrain it, the more fiercely it comes. Hearing Catherine's words that sounded like both a confession and a revelation, Nick gently embraced her. After tasting the poison, he had already fallen madly in love. Even if it cost him his life, he probably wouldn't hold resentment. After a moment of intimacy, Catherine slowly reached under the bed, but seeing Nick so defenseless against her, she ultimately chose to let go. Undeniably, she had fallen deeply in love with this man. If one day this man betrayed her, then the ice pick hidden under the bed would come in handy. Here the movie ends. When I watched this movie over a decade ago, all my attention was on those intimate moments. Revisiting it now, I realize it tells such a thrilling suspense story. Though the director never explicitly states who the killer is, many subtle clues tell the audience. Catherine is merely a writer, not a prophet. She couldn't accurately write about someone's death process every time. The only possibility is that she was writing her own plans. And the graduation photo Nick found, the way Beth looked at Catherine didn't resemble obsessive infatuation. Disgust mixed with fear made more sense. More details won't be listed one by one. Fans of crime and suspense movies must watch the original film.